そのためにたくさんの方が手伝ってくださいました。そのお一人お一人の名前、顔というのは挙げていったらもう数えきれないですけれど、あなた方はもう感謝の気持ちでいっぱいです。
I was delighted to get the opportunity to come and practice as a Shuso here in Japan, as there aren't many opportunities in England or in Europe, for that matter, for being a Shuso and doing a Hosen Shik. However, I was wholly unprepared for the warmth of Shuei's family, the support from the Dankasu families, the incredible welcome I have felt at this temple, and what a great honour it has been to be a part of these ceremonies over this weekend. I'm still a bit taken aback by the entire experience. It has been beyond anything I could have imagined. A fantastic opportunity, not just to do my Hosen Shik, but to participate in the life of a Japanese temple in a real community of Buddhist support. The couple of weeks I've spent with Shoei and his family have been just brilliant.
Hello, and this conversation today is being recorded from Bodh Gaya, prime Buddhist pilgrimage place in India. When the Dalai Lama used to come to Bodh Gaya to give empowerment and teachings, the place would be filled with more than 100,000 people. Now, these days he doesn't come anymore, but still the place is very vibrant and it's really lovely energy, all this cultural diversity and ways of expression of devotion, practice, chant, sometimes everything together. And there's also possibility to find some silence, yes. And if there are any noises, background noises, please notice that I really on purposely kept this interview completely unfiltered. So now let me introduce to you Dan, or Jiryu by his Dhamma name. He's a Zen priest in the Sotō Zen tradition. And remarkably, Dan, after several decades of seated practice, zazen or shikantaza, has committed himself to not just taking bodhisattva vows, but also to take that further and take a leap forward on the path of undergoing rigorous training. Let's put it this way, to simplify. So he has undergone training and has attended ceremonies and practice training in Japan in several monasteries, often as the only Westerner. And it is to notice that Sotō Zen is known to be rigorous. It's probably the least known path. It's often assumed that Zen is all about minimalism, but Zen is actually not that minimalistic in its own way, and there are several roles and several rituals, and very rigorously, diligently undertaken in the monasteries and in the temples. So Dan will relate to that, and he had really a great privilege to undergoing these challenges, but at the same time really diving into the heart of Zen. And that's what is transpiring from this conversation with him. That Zen, yes, it's a rigorous seated practice, being still as a mountain and soft as bamboo. Yet the mountain also represents the ego. So yeah, it's all that needs to be dissolved in the practice. And at the same time, embodying the practice, so everything you do becomes Zen. And he will relate it to his experience with a lot of heart and nice little details, make his journey more enjoyable. It's been challenging, but it's been really rewarding for his heart. And he relates to that really very well. So welcome, Dan, and welcome, Jiryu, to the show today.
Jiryu, good afternoon or good morning.
Good morning or good afternoon.
And you are in the UK.
Yes.
And you have set up a dojo on a boat. Would you explain a bit? Where do you live, and how are your surroundings for your practice?
So at the moment, I live on a narrowboat on the inland waterways of the United Kingdom. One of our greatest treasures in many respects, that there are canals and rivers connecting up the whole of the UK, which are a delight to travel slowly on. And I've found it a blessed opportunity to travel last year hundreds of miles at a very slow walking pace. It's like a pilgrimage, but my pilgrimage is along the rivers and accompanied by herons and kingfishers and all manner of wondrous natural things.
Okay. So you have set up a sort of, that's your practice environment. So let me just introduce you formally. So your name is Jiryu, and you are a Zen monk in the Sotō Zen tradition. Am I saying this correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And your name, Jiryu, maybe you can explain that to us, what it means and how did you get it? For those who don't know.
So the characters for the name are Ji and Ryu. Ji means compassion and Ryu, dragon. So we would interpret this as a compassionate dragon or a dragon of compassion. I was given this name when I was first ordained as a lay practitioner by my teacher, Mokuho Mercier Roshi. It is the first of the two Dharma names I was given. After a few years of practicing with Mokuho Roshi, I requested Tokudo ordination to become a monk and to commit my life to this practice. I'm not sure there's much more to say than that. Our monks' names, these are generally not shared with people. So I use my first Dharma name, Jiryu. In this part of the world, I am still known by my Christian name, Dan. In the West, we tend not to use Dharma names so much, which personally I think is a bit of a shame, because by taking on a Dharma, by cutting my hair, by leaving home, changing my life, I have drawn a line in the sand between Dan, who was a software engineer and a father for 50 years, and Jiryu, who is a disciple of the Buddha and follower of the way. So there are many people in the world. All of the monks and nuns I know in Japan and elsewhere in the world know me as Jiryu and have never heard the name Dan. And there are many people in the European tradition who know me as Dan and don't really know the name Jiryu. At the end of the day, I don't mind what people call me.
And you don't mind, but I will call you Jiryu. I think it's a matter of practice, respect as well for the commitment you've taken, and I appreciate that. Myself, some people know me as Isabella and some people know me as Ahsoka. Those who just got to know me, they don't even know about us, Isabella, but these names, and I am sure in your case as well, these names are received, and in some way they have there's two sides of the coin, if I would say. One is sort of a quality that we carry already, and the other one is the quality to continue to develop. At least that's what the case in the tradition where I received the name Ahsoka. So can you speak about that for you?
Yes, I see that the name Jiryu was well chosen. I mean, partly, although Mokuho Roshi didn't know this, I always wanted to be a dragon when I grew up as a child. And I think I have been noted to have a great deal of compassion for birds and dogs and cats and fish and trees and so forth. But sometimes I can be a little impatient with human beings, a little frustrated by our behavior around the world, our constant ability to treat one another poorly. And so the name is asking me to put a real effort, some real dragon-like power into this compassion and bring it to all sentient beings. That is to say, human beings, as much as the many other beings there are on the planet. So I use it to motivate myself to love it.
There's a lot to unpack, but you mentioned wanting to be a dragon when you were a child. So can you tell us a bit about the journey? How this journey of yours go from being an engineer and a software engineer and an AI geek and becoming a renunciant, live as a monk, as a monastic, go to Japan and have training in sometimes difficult conditions. Can you just unpack that for us a bit? The way you prefer is fine.
Yes, I guess from the earliest age, I have been the sort of person who is fascinated by the world around me and driven by the question, why? Why is it like this? Why is there anything at all? As the phenomenal world we experience, it's a magnificent and amazing thing. And so I'm a born philosopher. I remember going to Sunday school as a child and asking very difficult questions from the vicar there, who really did not need such a precocious and trouble-causing child. And the same for all of my teachers at school, difficult questions. Because I have been just interested in everything about why there should be a world and how it should be like this. And so my trajectory has taken me through being an academic and studying hard in order to understand maths and physics and chemistry, biology, the sort of our modern world's way of explaining how things happen. But these are, of course, just stories that we tell. Ultimately, they are not satisfying. When I was 17 or 18, I encountered Buddhist poetry, Japanese poetry, and this struck a deep chord in me for some reason and led me to the teachings of the Buddha. And when I came to read the Four Noble Truths, the simplicity and straightforwardness of this was like an arrow that cannot miss its mark. And this part of the background of my continuing study at the end of the day. Is what the Buddha has taught there the truth? Is it straightforward enough? And of course, the Buddha always taught things to be verifiable. This is not a religion with great metaphysical beliefs or anything. These were a system of very practical practices that might help us feel better about being in the world. So for many years, I played with the teachings of the Buddha, but I was missing a Sangha. I'm sometimes a remote solo sort of a person, and I was doing the work for myself, sometimes sitting meditation, but often reading and studying too much. You can't do this with the mind at the end of the day, but it took me a long time to come to understand how fruitless that search might be. After traveling for many years in order to see the world, in order to do every job you can imagine, I went back to university to study philosophy. I had a son at that point, and of course, when you have children, your life is not your own. You spend this looking after your children. So I studied philosophy at university. This helped me think more clearly and confuse myself less often. But philosophy is not the most practical sort of a degree you can have if you would like to have a job and put food on the place. So I did a master's degree in artificial intelligence, biologically inspired artificial intelligence. This again interests me because I could build small robots in order to try and understand, how does a robot have a world? What does this robot think? Does it feel? Has it some consciousness? All sorts of fascinating questions, but they are just play. at the end of the day. Delightful play I really enjoy. But again, ultimately, they are not quite satisfying. I worked for many years setting up businesses, initially using artificial intelligence to work in the city, constructing portfolios. This is not a great way to spend one's life at the end of the day. Helping people make more money, it wasn't really going anywhere. So when we had the financial crash in 2007, this was a great opportunity to work locally, building websites for local charities and things that helped me recover from working in the city to some extent. I did this for many years until my son had left home and gone to university himself. And at this point, I had started practicing with a local Zen group in Brighton. And here we have the third jewel. I had spent so much time with the teachings of the Buddha, trying to understand the Dharma and not really paying any attention to the Sangha. And there are three jewels for a good reason at the end of the day. So I was grateful, more than one can express, to discover a Sangha that I could practice with. And I came back to the very form of Zen from which I'd been reading the poetry when I was 17 or 18, sort of completing a circle in my life. I practiced with this Sangha, took lay ordination, later was ordained by Mokuho Roshi to become a monk, at which point I decided to commit wholeheartedly to that. In England, or in the European and American traditions, our monks and nuns, I think we should call them priests, because I don't live in a monastery, and the word monk is somebody who lives and practices in a monastery. I am a priest, somebody who lives in the world next to everybody else and experiencing the life that ordinary people experience. And this is a good thing. It helps one understand, it helps one's compassion enormously if you have experienced the difficulties and the joys of an ordinary mundane life. You can relate to people and their needs and so on much better. So one thing I like about the modern practice of Zen in Europe and America is that our practitioners, priests, monks, whatever you want to call them, again, it's just a word, that we often also have jobs and live in the community. However, it took me a while. I wanted to understand what it meant to be a monk in the modern world. And so I felt that working alongside being a monk, this wasn't helping me commit to the practice. If I spent 8 or 10 hours every day filling my mind with confusion and difficulty, and then 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening sitting in order to recover from that confusion, perhaps there was an easier way. Perhaps I would commit to being a monk. And this led to the possibility of traveling to Japan and doing proper monastic training in the monasteries in Japan.
So would you go down then to what it actually is, which is the practice of sitting, shikantaza, but there actually is a protocol and the rituals that go together with this practice of sitting. And I from what I understand from your journey, you have passed several steps of these trainings. So I would like you to lay that out, so maybe we can clear up the bush a bit about what does it actually mean to commit as a Zen monk to a practice and coming into a Sangha and going for training in Japan.
So the practice of Zen in Japan is quite different to the practice in Europe. In Europe, we just practice shikantaza, as you've observed, and we practice this with the people at large. Our dojo is there to allow anybody who walks past to come and learn the practice of sitting. And the founder of this tradition, Dogen Zenji, staked everything on the practice, simply sitting. However, Dogen practiced in a monastery that had come from a long Chinese lineage, where the practice in the monastery was bound by the monastic rules, how the monks live with one another, favorably in order to support the practice rather than.
You mean the Vinaya, the Vinaya?
So here is something which is interesting. So the Vinaya didn't quite make it to China.
Okay.
So China is a long way from North India, a tremendous journey over terrible mountains and so on. Bodhidharma was the great teacher who brought the teachings of the Buddha to China with an appropriate lineage. But the sutras that he brought with him, he did not carry the entire Pali Canon and the Vinaya and so forth. Most of the practice was founded on the teachings in the Lotus Sutra. So monks in China at the time knew that there were rules, but they didn't know what these rules were. And so instead we have Shinji. These are various books. There are 4 or 5 of them, which are the rules which cohere the monastic practice. And the Shinji which Dogen uses describes our practice from 6 o'clock in the evening until 6 o'clock in the following evening. And so here he describes this practice all night. While we are sleeping, we are practicing the way we lie down and so forth. Everything is prescribed. So we don't so much have the, I'm not even sure how many in the Vinaya, 180, 200 vows that a traditional Theravadan monk might take.
227 for the male and 311 for women. Yes.
So men and women together in the European practice take 16 vows. It's a much simpler set of vows, and our approach to the vows is quite different. And this would seem like we had a very lax practice when talking with Theravadan monks about this. It seems like we hardly make any effort in Zen. However, if you look at the Shinji, every moment of my day is prescribed in terms of attitude, how I would stand, how I move, where I am going, what I am doing. And so in a very real, we are as bound by as many rules, and our behavior is as constrained and as brought in line with the Dharma in a similar kind of way that the Vinaya developed. And it has a similar practicality to it. So there are the stories in the Vinaya say how something went wrong. How a monk met a nun who he had been married to before they had both taken ordination, and they got a little carried away. And so the Buddha laid down the rules saying, well, monks and nuns shouldn't get carried away like that. And so the rules developed practically out of the sorts of behaviors that human beings are very good at, that may disrupt the flow of the Dharma. And the same thing is true in the Shinji and the monastic practice in China and Japan. One thing that's lovely about the rules is that they show you what people may have been doing at the time. So one of my favorite is that I am not allowed to store armor and short swords in the shuryo. And this kind of implies that at some point a monk was caught storing armor and short swords, in the study. So the rules are interesting in that respect, in giving us some idea of what life must have been like in China and Japan as these rules developed and as the monastic practice settled into the sort of practice it is today.
So, all right. So now that you've given us an idea of how a day starts, how a day unfolds in a monastery, and you also mentioned that there might be some slight adjustments between how it is being practiced in Japan and how it is being practiced elsewhere, or in the West in particular. So would you mind now zooming a bit and mapping for us the detailing other rituals, other steps into the training that you have taken, roles that have been taken, responsibilities, as well as it's pretty much structured. So, and I think, yes, you mentioned several times that it might be similar to a certain extent to other trainings in other traditions. But then Zen also has its own specific path in terms of the training. And so I would like you to elaborate a bit on that, please.
So when a young monk arrives at a monastery, he starts by striking the wood outside the monastery and asking, can I join? And the first thing that will happen is that we are sent to Tangaryo. This is to sit quietly in a room on your own for 2, 3, 4 days. Food is provided, but there is no contact with the rest of the Great Assembly. This is to allow you to put down the mundane world and to prepare yourself for the training that you're entering into. And it seems to me a bit like a period of quarantine almost, so that you are safe to enter the Great Assembly. And then one morning they'll come and get you, and there will be a ritual where you will go around and effectively introduce yourself to all of the monks, not by name, but merely by bowing at all of them as you go round. And then you would become a member of the Great Assembly. As a member of the Great Assembly, or Daishu in Japanese, then they can start training you on the different roles which are involved in the day-to-day running of the monastery. So one of the early roles that people do would be timing in the meditation hall. So someone has to prepare the hall for the monks and nuns when they get up in the morning to arrive and start practicing. Ring the bell for the start of the meditation period, get up and ring the bell for the start of kin-in, time the kin-in, ring the bell to kin-in is walking meditation. So in a practice of sitting meditation, we will do probably 40 minutes sitting, a very embodied meditation. Our practice is just engaging wholeheartedly with the present moment through our bodies. We're not training our minds. After 40 minutes or so, we will get up and do a very slow and ritualized period of walking meditation, maybe 10 minutes. One engages the same attitude, becoming fully embodied and just engaging in the walking. And then we will sit down again and do another 40 minutes of meditation. In an intensive practice period, a sesshin, we might go on doing this all day, sitting, walking, sitting, walking, sitting, walking. This is very tough. On a normal day, we will do probably 2 periods of sitting and 1 period of walking, and then go on to do ceremony. And somebody has to time this and ring the bell to let the monks know we are now sitting, or we are now going to stand up and walk. We can start walking. We will stop walking. We will go back to our seats. And so this is one of the first jobs that a young monk will be given. And all of their behavior is very ritualized. So they must stand just so. They must bow when anybody enters the zendo where we will sit. At a certain time, they will ring the bell in a particular way. At one monastery I practiced at with a very authentic practice, the Jigo would then walk around with the stick that Zen is so famous for. Actually, in Japan, hitting people with the stick doesn't happen very often, but this is to make sure that none of the monks are still sleeping, and that all of the monks have actually shown up for meditation, that there's no seats empty and nobody's missing, and check that people's postures are correct, straight back, ears above shoulders, above hips, head tucked in straight, chin in. We have a very precise posture to follow in order to engage with that very embodied meditation. So their job is to check that everybody is sitting right and that everybody is present and that the timing of the process is exactly right.
I would like to ask a question. I would like to ask a question regarding the stick you mentioned. Am I correct to?
Yes.
It's true that that stick is infamed, doesn't have a good reputation in other places, but it actually is correct that one has to request that stick. So in what you just mentioned in the morning to prevent and to check, is that stick requested or is it just there?
So when the young monk is walking around with the stick, in Japan nowadays, they would not be using the stick. It is frowned on. Possibly senior monks and the abbot may use the stick if they see someone who's falling asleep. And I've seen the abbot in Kotaiji leap up silently and wake people up when they're nodded off. In the European traditions, the stick is requested. So maybe in the mid-morning sitting session, the leader of the session will announce that somebody is going to come round with the stick, and it is requested. So I will sit with my hands in shashu like this, and the person will come and tap me on the shoulder or bend over, and this stick, it shouldn't be frowned on. And we see throughout the writings in the Chinese and early Japanese periods that this is not a stick for punishing people. People aren't hit for being lazy or stupid or practicing badly. If you were asleep, the stimulation of the meridian in your the muscle here will wake you up. It doesn't hurt, but it really is like having a triple espresso very immediately.
Yeah.
And at the same time, if you are and you're all over the place and you can't sit still because your mind is running like a motor, the stick will calm your mind. It brings your focus immediately into that trapezoidal muscle and settles your mind. And so people ask for it if they are struggling with sloth or torpor, or struggling by being over-energized in the mind and needing to come back to their body.
Okay.
And if the stick is given, the kyosaku it is called. I keep mentioning stick, but it is named as the kyosaku.
Yeah, I've had the experience of a kyosaku.
And certainly, I have never seen it used. So if it is administered properly, it can really help in the sitting practice, and it would be frowned upon to use this as a form of a punishment or to put people right in any other way. I have seen it done like that, unfortunately, but this is not the teaching of the Buddha or of our ancestors in that respect. The stick is to support the practice and to help.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think it's an important point because it's not known. It's probably known to those who are familiar to Zen. And again, I'm not sure everyone is. I actually have a sense that there is very little that is being known. There's a lot that's been assumed, but there's very little that is actually being known. So thank you. That's why I asked the question, although I have had a chance of requesting kyosaku and actually like it. When it's well done, it actually, the result is indeed what you mentioned. It actually brings the focus back to what you're supposed to be in that case. So please continue on describing the rituals.
So we looked at the role of timing the morning meditation. At the same time, other young monks will leap up to ring other instruments or bells elsewhere in the monastery. So our practice is entirely held together by sounds. You don't have to think about what you are doing next. A bell will ring, or a wood will be struck, or something like that, which is summoning people. Sometimes the great big drums that the Japanese are famous for to start a period of samu, for example. And somebody will be responsible for striking the drum or striking a particular bell or striking a wood. And often many people will be involved in concert. So at the end of a meditation period, it would start with the big bell being rung, the bonsho, possibly 16 times with 30-second intervals to tell the whole world it's time to get up now. And then the kitchen will strike an instrument called a cloud drum, a metal gong, in a very particular rhythm, a rhythm which is heard all over the Zen practice. It's done on the cloud gongs and on the various hands throughout the monastery. A set of descending sounds at top, 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 top. And these sounds tell us what we are doing. So at the end of meditation, the kitchen will announce that that they're ready, that breakfast is being cooked even now, and we can stop meditation and go and do our ceremony. And there will be an interplay between the cloud gong in the kitchen and the han in the meditation room. So they will talk to one another. And then whoever is responsible for the ceremonial room, the Dharma hall, will also have an instrument, and they will then start to summon the monks from the meditation hall to the Dharma hall, again with these instruments playing back and forth, talking to one another. So there will be a meditation bell and a wood in the meditation hall, and a big bell in the Dharma hall, and the big bell will take over and summon the monks and play them into start practicing the ceremony. And each of these roles is something that a young monk will be given and have to learn, and it will be very precise, because the sounds throughout the day, everybody gets familiar with them, and if something is missing, it doesn't feel right. And the practice of learning to play one of these instruments is one of the ways in which one engages with the present moment and learns the Dharma. You have to hit the wood in a particular set of rhythms, 7 strikes and a roll down, 5 strikes and a roll down, 3 strikes and a roll down. And you'd be surprised how anxious counting to 7 makes you. Oh, I must get this right. I must get this right. 1, 2. And you can feel on the inside all of this fear and anxiety. And this is a beautiful thing to watch. I've been able to count to 7 since I was 3 or 4 years old. And yet there I am at 55 in this new context. And suddenly so much fear and anxiety about whether you get it right or not. And here is the opportunity just to observe that fear and anxiety rise up, to see how it shapes the world and the experience, and to try to let go of it. What happens is exactly what happens. And if you miss a note, you miss a note. If you are fearful, then you can hear this in the sound. Every monk in the Great Assembly know that fear, and you must just let go of it. I was told by senior monks, if you make a mistake, make it with full confidence and no one will know. But if you make that mistake with anxiety, everybody will know. And if you are feeling anxious, the bell will sound wrong, the wood will sound wrong, the rhythm will sound wrong. So you are given this opportunity to get over yourself, that petty fear, that one of the 8 winds that the Buddha teaches about. What will these people think of me if I can't do this? Get over it. Or you are there with your small ego telling you those terrible stories which have held you back all your life. Oh, Jiryu-san, you can't even count to 7. Well, get over it.
In the monastery where I practiced in the US at Upaya Zen Center, I had gone into the training of calling the meditation. So that goes for about 30 minutes or 20 minutes before. I can't really remember, but it's very precise, and it also starts very slow and then continue, and then goes, and then very, very quickly. So there were these little piles to help us on the table next to the gong. There were these piles of coins, quarters in the US, which you move, and so And I remember the anxiety of counting. Oh my gosh, did I actually put the coin back or did I put it forward? What did I do? And I remember that one day I can't remember the name of the responsible person who was actually checking on me. And I go into the dojo, we do the practice, and at the very end of everything, at the breakfast, he comes, you were 1 minute too fast. 1 minute too fast. And I said, all right, there's someone actually checking because they've been doing it for years, and I had been doing it for maybe 3 days. So I had 1 minute. So that to say also how in Zen everything is extremely precise, right?
Yes. And in the training, after every piece of ceremony or action like this, the whole Daishu gets together for feedback. And sometimes this can feel like terrible bullying. When you are the newest person, you get all of the feedback. And so everybody has something to say. You did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. Nobody's ever going to say, oh, you did well.
That would be too easy.
I won't say anything at all. But part of the responsibility, it can feel like bullying. But what is happening there again is just getting you to let go of your ego and to get precise about this, to do this with all of your heart and all of your body as well as you can, and to let go of it immediately. Because what happens in the world is just what happens in the world. It's like this.
It's like this. So we can try to say,
do it as well as possible. We can try with, but what happens? It's like this. Let go of it. And so that feedback is a very, very hard way. We must be humble. We're requesting the feedback. We must apologize to the Daishu and say, when I hit the drum this morning, my rhythm wasn't quite perfect. And the head monk will say, yes. And also the third time you hit it, it made a terrible noise, And that, again, for a Westerner, this is hard practice. For a 55-year-old Westerner to take this sort of criticism and feedback from a brand new 18-year-old, this is hard practice. But if the 18-year-old is the senior monk and who has been in temples all his life, perhaps his feedback is good. But this feels so difficult, and it goes on day after day after day, and it really does help you let go of so much of the ridiculous storytelling, the self-importance we can have, and so on. It's a hard practice.
Right. Really... You mentioned here and there since we started this conversation, you mentioned a few things here and there that were referring somehow to either hindrances, the hindrances that we do have deep rooted, and also, and so that are called upon to be softened, to be dissolved, as well as you mentioned the 8 worldly winds. So the 8 worldly winds are, for those who don't know, are these 4 pairs of praise and ill repute, and like and dislike, and gain and pain and pleasure, and gain and loss, and that's it, if I'm correct. So these are the 8 worldly winds, right? We are constantly, between brackets, bombarded with it. They can come to us. But what you mentioned, which I think is really the knot, it's the key, how can I say, the seed, the root of everything is the self-importance. So this way of that this I coming back into the picture. Sometimes sometimes in very subtle ways that we become aware. It's probably by cutting down all these actions, as you say. I'm very hungry. It's time for the meal, but I have to wait. I mean, there is one bell which is going to remind me, which is going to announce that the kitchen is ready, and then there's another bell which is inside the dojo, which is meant to let me know, but that doesn't mean that I can stand up and go, oh, there's so much else that needs to go, and so many people who are going to be going to the table before me because I'm a junior and things like this. So I guess it's the repetition of these behaviors, and also the capacity that we have to soften up faster or slower, and to have patience with ourselves and with others, and coming into the meal. So there's probably 20 minutes that have gone, and I'm so hungry, and the food is so small, and it's not what I like, and it's not what I wanted today, and everything else, right? You went through that.
At Kotaiji, there was a wonderful opportunity. I've had eating difficulties all my life. And And it's okay in a monastery. I'm unlikely to be fed meat. I've been a vegetarian since the early age. But in Japan, I'm certainly going to be fed mushrooms. And I don't like mushrooms. I've never eaten mushrooms. I won't have anything to do with mushrooms. I had maybe 5 portions of mushrooms a day at Kotaiji every day. And you have no choice. The food is given to you, served to you, and you eat it. And you can't say, oh, I don't want that, or I have a bit more of this stuff, and so on. You get what you're given. You make a clean plate. You know, we
And you're
wash our
hungry
bowls
anyway. Yeah.
And so every day there is this confrontation with oh, I don't like that, I like this, and no choice, no room for maneuver at all. Eat the mushrooms, Dan. Learn to love these mushrooms. There are now some Japanese mushrooms I would quite look forward to eating, which is a wonderful liberation, isn't it? Something that I've held and carried with me since I was 3 or 4 years old, that has made my life difficult, and an opportunity to get over it, to be freed
So
from.
this is the practice, actually. Eat your mushrooms.
Yes.
Eat your mushroom and be grateful. So
Yes.
beside that, there are other rituals that you have learned, and that also other rituals that have been part of somehow, can I call this a bit of a hardship? It was difficult, right, in the beginning to actually be molded. And you mentioned age, actually. Sorry, I forgot about that. You mentioned age and the fact of receiving, between brackets, receiving order, or somehow having a senior who is actually much, much, much junior than you, and receiving order. So in terms of age, so that could be, it's been mentioned in other traditions as well. So the earlier you ordain, the better, because it's easier to take on these things. But you've done it, and several of us have done it. And so can you please go a bit along the lines of what came after that? What did you have to go through after that? Which I guess also meant softening up and reducing your level of expectation, getting into the stream, and eventually turning out to be called, I don't know what's your title now, but you have done your Hosen Shik, which is a Dharma Combat. So how did that happen? What's the journey there?
So I have done 3 of these intensive training practices in Japan now, and the opportunity came up to be shuso, head monk, for a ceremony in Hokkaido. So there was a family temple in Hokkaido where they were going to have a new abbot. So the father was passing on his temple to his son, and this is a very important for the local community. And the life of the temple, a very important ceremony. And in order to do this ceremony, they need a head monk. And so the days of this ceremony were as much mine as they were Shoei-san, the new abbot, as important to me, and I was as important to that ceremony. And this isn't something, this ceremony can only be practiced either twice a year at a formal monastery, or when there is a new abbot. And so here in the West, we have few monasteries, few temples needing new abbots, and quite a lot of people my age who have committed to the Dharma and who would like to take these ceremonies and to progress up for want of a better word, the career ladder of a Zen monk. So I can be a trainee monk, like an acolyte to some extent. I do the training in the monasteries, I learn the instruments, I learn the different roles, I learn the different parts of the ceremonies, the chanting, I learn everything, including being the kokum, preparing the breakfast and, providing tea to visitors, all of it done with that tremendous formality and accuracy and attention to detail and present moment awareness. You can't practice Zen without completely committing to what's happening now. And then I can eventually be a head monk and do this Dharma Combat, which gives me the opportunity then I can now inherit my father's temple. Sadly, my father does not have a temple, so there is nothing to inherit in my case. But for a young Japanese monk, this is a very important part of their progression. In my own case, having done this and at my master's discretion, I may be given transmission if I have learnt enough of the Dharma. If I have got, if I have learnt from my teacher, he may give me the stamp of approval to move on and become a kyoshi and to start teaching more formally. So that would be the next step on my career path. And it's kind of taken for granted in Japan. As soon as somebody does their Hosen Shik, then their teacher will give them Dharma transmission and they can move on. In the West, often people will practice for 20 years with their master before they receive transmission. And I think in the older traditions in China and 1,000 years ago in Japan, that would have been more the case, that the Dharma transmission was, it required some work, some effort, some, the whole complete commitment to the practice of the Dharma. But in order to, to move along these steps, the first thing to do is to sort of qualify as a monk, to not be a trainee monk anymore. And so I have to do the periods of monastic training, and then eventually this ceremony you mentioned, the Hosen Shik,
which means Dharma Combat.
This is what it boils down to. Yes, there are some other things, and we see Dharma Combat is, it's an important part of the Tibetan tradition, for example, and they train hard on debating, don't they? A lovely, really passionate style to it in the Tibetan tradition. It looks great, it's great, and it helps them learn and understand how does the teachings, how do they work in the written sense. Zen is a lot less about the written sense of formal teachings and much more about an unconscious and heartfelt engagement with the Dharma.
So now we are entering more detail about your last ceremony that you attended at one very large temple monastery in Japan. So we were talking about the Dharma Combat, so Hosen Shik. So I'd like you to have a bit of giving us a bit on details on that. And then if we can just wrap it up towards the end by mentioning a bit the evolution of Japan the evolution of Zen in Japan compared to what we think it is in Europe and in the West in general, what you know about it, and where do you actually continue your practice while you are back in the old continent. So over to you, and let's go back to our journey.
So we were talking about Dharma Combat.
Yes.
And so in Japan, Dharma Combat centers around a mondo, a series of questions and answers, which are often based on an idea and a piece of poetry. Now, in Japan, the questions and the answers are known in advance. I believe sometimes in America and maybe occasionally in Europe, the questions and the answers would be entirely made up on the spot. And this is a great opportunity for somebody to show their ability to answer quickly and answer with surprise. But in Japan, the answers, the questions and answers are formalized, because the Dharma Combat here, it's not, are you able to learn a series of questions and answers? Are you able to have learned all of the sutras and so on? It is, how do you comport yourself during this ceremony when you are put on the spot and it's a very public ceremony. So people are invited from the local community to come and see this very public, test, so to speak, of a young monk. There were maybe 100 monks from across Japan and another 100 or so people from the local community, maybe even more than that, at my Dharma ceremony. So you can imagine when we're talking about those hindrances, I have to perform well for Shai-san, the Abbot who gave me this wonderful opportunity and had shared his family and his community with me for weeks before the ceremony, his big day. and he's taking a tremendous risk, having a Westerner who he's never met, from a different culture with different ideas, come and do this. So it was a fantastic experience. How do I comport myself? This is the Dharma Combat. Not self is very fast questions and answers. They are shouted very passionately. In my case, the questions were in Japanese and the answers were in English. Because, as I say, the words don't matter. It's what's behind the words. It's the spirit and the engagement in the moment that matters. The total commitment to what's happening. The words are only words. The questions are asked quickly. It is said that Zazen is the only practice. What do you think? Do not confuse. It's back and forth very, very fast and has to be shouted with all of your heart. But while sitting in a very formal posture, I have to hold this stick, which, is my right to teach, so to speak. And I was finding it so hard not to bang the stick into the ground as I'm shouting. Is that what you think? Thinking I could break this very expensive and ancient piece of equipment. I have to sit with such composure. And there was a moment when I was asked a question and the answer just completely went from my mind. And that is the real test. How long am I going to sit there? It felt for me like ages. Do I run into a panic? Do I go, oh no, what have I done? Or do I just think, of course I know the answer to this question, and just get on with answering it? How do I control myself, given all of that pressure and all of the, so many people watching and so on? How does the community help me? The greater community of monks, there's a point at which I am walking behind the altar. And so out of sight, just for a moment, from everybody. And behind the altar, there are 4 or 5 young monks, one of them mopping my brow, another one giving me a drink, like a pit stop in a Formula One race.
What an analogy.
By these people. There's 2 or 3 seconds where I disappear and reappear. And, I was refreshed and somebody straightening up my outfit and getting the collars right and just brilliant. Everybody pulling together for the same thing to make this work. And the performance, the answers, the questions, the passion, the wholehearted engagement with the experience. What a great thing. What am I missing as I'm getting carried away in the moment? What am I missing telling you about this, Ashoka?
You're not missing anything. There's so many details. Unfortunately, we won't be covered. If you want, we can have another session a day about some of the details. We were just talking about the Dharma Combat. And then I would like you to, you have put the Dharma Combat into the perspective of the whole practice and the whole training that you've gone through, and that how wonderful it was to have had that opportunity with a monastic who didn't know you beforehand. What I really appreciated is you haven't mentioned the fact that you actually understand a bit of Japanese. So probably you are ahead of some of us common mortals who may have gone into this similar training. But you haven't mentioned one thing. In the sanghas, in the greater assembly that you have been inserted twice while you were in Japan, were there other Westerners? You haven't said anything about that.
Yeah.
Were there other Westerners, or were you the only one?
So the first monastery I attended it was called Toshoji in Okayama Prefecture. Mm-hmm. Now this is actually an international training monastery. So okay. You have people, I studied with people from South America. I didn't realize there was such a strong following of Zen in South America. Mm-hmm. Russian fellow, people from all over Europe. I was the only Englishman, and a few mm-hmm. North American.
Okay.
And of course, some Japanese, but this was an international context. Also very rare because monks and nuns were practicing in the same place. So this was a mixed sex monastery. It is run by a fellow Suzuki Roshi who has traveled, and practiced in America and so forth. he has a great deal of understanding, both of the need to train, that we will make mistakes. And it is through the mistakes and only through the mistakes that we're able to learn anything at all. He had a great deal of understanding for Westerners, and particularly older Westerners who may not be able to sit in Seiza, that's the position, sitting on your knees, which hurts. And you have to adopt this position sometimes for 40 minutes and then stand up and do something, but you can't feel your legs from the knees down at all. Suzuki Roshi knew that this was difficult for older people coming from Europe and so on. And understood that Europeans are different. I'm not Japanese, and I'm not training to be Japanese. I'm training to follow the Dharma. So
Good
this
point.
monastery was well set up.
That's a very good point, yeah.
Many foreigners and many Japanese people, and monks and nuns. And I think nuns in the Great Assembly make a big difference. The second place I stayed, Kotaiji in Nagasaki, this is a male-only monastery and not a training monastery. So it was a rare opportunity, thanks to a European Reiho-san, who is the vice shiki there now, to train in that place. That was a great honor to be able to go there at all. There were a few other Westerners there, but this wasn't so much a training monastery, so it was much harder for me. I made mistakes, and the Great Assembly was not happy about those mistakes. I'm a professional monk. I should know this stuff. You should get this right. And so, so my ego took quite a beating there. And the focus there, they, as a working monastery, they were doing far, far more ceremonies for the public, many more funerals, many more memorial ceremonies and so forth. A very busy place. And so it had to be sharp. You have to learn to dress properly, not like Westerners dress, where we can't put these clothes on. Somebody had to show me how you put a shirt on. How do you wear a kimono? How do you comport yourself while wearing this outfit so that you don't become a scruffy mess? Because it mattered. You know, there were people there and people having these important ceremonies all day, every day. So you need to get it right. So this was a harder place to practice because of it being a modern and city-based setting, whereas Toshoji is a very old monastery set in the mountains in rural Japan. Very different. Then Shoei-san's place, family temple, a small, well, not small at all, his place, but based in the community, with the people from the community engaging in the temple and the practice there much more.
Right. And the one where you had the Hosen Shik is another one in northern Japan.
Yes, this was a family temple rather than a monastery.
Which is called?
That was Kotokuji. This is the one I mentioned in Hokkaido. So quite a large family temple. An incredibly beautiful Dharma hall.
What is the length of the ceremony?
So the actual Dharma ceremony itself takes around an hour, but there are other ceremonies. So the day before there is the head monk, the Shuso arrival ceremony, where I am formally asked to be the head monk. Then there is a tea ceremony where the Dharma Combat is announced, and there's a great discussion. You know, the Shuso will battle for the Dharma tomorrow at this time, and the public are invited to come and ask their questions. And then there is the formal Dharma Combat. But of course, I also have to be head monk for the retirement of the previous abbot. I have an important role with the Shinzan Shiki, the new abbot's arrival and his installation as the abbot. And as head monk, I have to demonstrate how to be a head monk, the correct comportments and so on. So the whole thing was the video compresses 2 full days of ceremony into a few minutes. And
thank you for
ceremonies.
Thank you for sharing that video with us. Now, if we can come to wrap up this conversation, I know we can go on for longer, but I think maybe we can have another conversation about other topics if you would like to elaborate on. But is really this bigger picture in this case of Zen, of the practice, and Japan and the West. And where do you practice these days? I seem to have understood that you attend some sessions at the Gendronniere, which is in France.
Yeah.
And that's probably because there isn't something similar in the UK. If you could wrap that up in a nutshell. I know there's a lot to say, but
So
we may...
in the UK, we have many local groups, and the local group in Brighton that I started practicing, run by a nun and a monk called Jay and Heather, who have held that dojo for more than 20 years. And that is the true practice of the Dharma, committing to help people in Brighton for more than 20 years, day in and day out. It's a marvelous thing they've done there, and they have opened up this great opportunity for me to do what I do. I still try and practice with them as much as possible, but because I am perpetually moving, I'm a wandering monk traveling on my boat at the moment, then I can't get to Brighton as often as I would like. I go and see my teacher, Mokuho, as much as I can in France. He is Abbot of La Gendronniere, as you say, so I will practice sessions at La Gendronniere, and also with his organisation Tamborin. So at the end of February, I will go to a session in Brittany, run by one of his key disciples, just to be able to catch up with Guy again. And I'm organising a session in May where Guy will come to
the UK.
England to run a session
In the UK. That's really nice. So that is kind of your reality now since you have come back from Japan. And it also, I think, gives you, yes, you are a wandering monk living on a boat in the canals in the UK, but you still have a sense of belonging to a Sangha, do you?
Yes, the Sangha in Brighton, and I still practice. You know, I can sit every day, morning and evening. This is not difficult for someone like me, and practice ministry. You know, the how can I touch the heart or help the lives of people that I meet day in and day out? Those people on boats, those people on the towns I pass through, and so on. What can I do? The practice of the Bodhisattva is to give one's life for the well-being of others. And others are everywhere, aren't they? So I feel the connection with my master Mokuho and his broad Sangha, Tamborin, which are based across Europe, France, Germany, Spain. Focus on La Gendronniere in the Loire Valley in France, where he is the abbot. I practice in Brighton, and I get together for sessions all across England and so on as much as possible.
So Zen without borders somehow. Yes, and how the fact that you have now somehow you have reached this level of Hosen Shik gives you Susho. That's it, Susho level. Is that it? How it's called? Okay. So having that, how does that position you, if I may say, with regard to the dojo in Brighton, the Gendronniere? You have come into those sanghas as a layperson who was taking the vows. You are now, many years later, after several training in Japan, you are shusho, so you could actually be a head monk in a monastery, but you are part of a sangha. So how does that position you? Have you noticed some... Is there anything that you can say about that?
I think there is a tremendous risk for people who have been to train in Japan to think this is something important when the practice is sitting and helping the people around you.
Right.
And so whatever the career ladder that you have in Japan has no relevance at all to the practice of the Dharma here in Europe. It means I have quite a lot of experience and insight into the practice in terms of where it came from and intensive practice. So, 6 months of all day, every day is a very intensive practice period. It is different practicing a sesshin, 4 or 5 times a year and sitting with a local group a few times a week. So so it is experience of that sort of practice, but formally it would be wrong to think that this makes me in any way better or worse than anybody else who is committed to the practice.
Right.
That risk identifying, we Westerners have got tremendous egos for that sort of thing, and we just need to let go of it. There is
So
no career.
they actually are. We are going to have to wrap it up. So we really have to wrap it up at this point. So there are a number of susho in the sangha that you belong to. I would say there are a number of susho, which I really appreciate the fact that you mentioned that there is no me more than other, but there still is seniority, because this is what sangha is made of, whether it is in Japan or whether it is in the UK or in Europe or in the West. Most sanghas operate with this sort of seniority. So you fit back into the greater sangha, and you continue to practice. Do you have any aspiration to continue your training further? Because it gives a sense, it's not about achieving, or it's not about a career. Although you use the word career several times, I know that you don't really mean it in a conventional way. You really mean it as a very easy analogy for us to understand how things work, that they actually are steps into the training. Most monastic sanghas have that, and also have the respect of the most senior. Sometimes the most senior is junior to us. But do you have aspiration? Is there anything else that you can do to actually continue to continue some more formal training, or is this some sort of ceiling?
It's difficult to say. What I need to do now is make some value out of my experience. So the times I've spent in Japan, what insight have I had that I can bring back to our practice here in Europe in a gentle way? And what insight from the very extreme and engaged class of practice, the intensity of it, can I bring back to our practice here in Europe and so on? So I need to commit to to Mokuho Roshi Sangha and bring some value back out of the experience in Japan. It wasn't just a holiday. It should make a difference by day-to-day practice. And if I can do this, if I can bring some value back to the community, if I stay practicing, try to stay mindful in every moment of every day, just this, then maybe my teacher will see fit to give me transmission. That would be the next step in the way Japan does things, and at that point, maybe I can start formally teaching.
Dharma transmission.
Yes.
Dharma transition is called. How is it called in Zen?
Sorry, say that again.
How in Zen, in the Zen jargon, how is the Dharma transmission called?
Goodness, give me a moment.
Okay, I didn't want to make you feel uncomfortable with that, but it does have a name, right? It does have a name.
In a moment,
Please,
I'll try and remember it.
Don't feel uncomfortable with that. It's okay. So the Dharma transmission means that you can teach, but you can still be now involved in, when you say teaching, means it's not in the Theravada sense giving Dharma talks. That you can do already. Can you?
Well,
it doesn't work in the same way.
It is a bit like that. Yes, I can give Dharma talks, or at least Mokuho Roshi would like me to give Dharma talks, and I can do Kusen during Zazen. It gives me a sort of a stamp of approval to do this sort of thing. And to start expressing something of what I've received from Mokuho Roshi, his teaching and his lineage, his particular expression of Zen. Have I learned anything at all from him?
Okay.
But it has to be careful. The idea, I want to be a teacher. Then this
Yeah.
is a tremendous trap to fall down, isn't it? Because it is
Yes.
I, and it looks to a future.
Exactly.
Whereas
Exactly.
right now, this is the only moment, and looking to a
Exactly.
future at some time in the future, this. So we can't completely ignore the future, but at the same time, we must be very careful about attaching to it and getting bound and tangled up in it, because
Yes.
this is how we suffer. These are the fundamental teachings of the Buddha in those Four Noble Truths. Um, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, absolutely. I was asking, absolutely. I was
um,
asking that because, it's, I actually wanted to know if there is more to come in the terms of the formal training. Definitely there needs to be also some rest, in the sense to sink in
yes,
everything that has occurred while you were, because it's quite recent that you actually returned to the UK. So let it sink in and see what comes next at the time, in due time, if ever that would be the case. It's not a performance, and there's no one to report to eventually, only to your own sitting, only to your sitting practice,
yes.
which is probably very sustained already. So is there anything that we haven't covered and that you would like to mention? And then we can just play it by impermanence and say bye and greet each other. But let me first know if we have missed anything that really is at your heart, that you would like to share in a nutshell.
There is a Zen story about climbing up 100-foot pole and taking the next step. And how do you take the next step when climbing up 100-foot pole? Surely you're going to fall off. And this is an expression of how we fear. And the commitment to the Dharma really is taking that next step from the top of that 100-foot pole. And this really is something that felt very close to my heart, particularly at the end of the first training period I did at Toshoji. The commitment I was making to the Dharma, I came with all sorts of questions. How can I, as a monk, support the development of the Dharma in Europe? And the only answer I got from any Roshis I asked about this, and the answer that came from my own practice, was trust the Dharma. We have no idea where the practice of Zen is going in Europe, and my deciding it must be like this or it should be like that. What it means to be a monk is this and this. These are only words, and they are surely wrong because they lack the fluidity to engage with the world as it unfolds in each moment.
Exactly.
And so stepping off that 100-foot, there is a tremendous liberation. We discover we were only always falling, and that's great. It's like this.
It's like this, says the big sage, who is actually settled not far from where you are in the UK.
Yeah.
Without revealing your position, your geolocation, actually is also that you are in the neighborhood of Amaravati, which is a large Theravada Thai forest tradition monastery in the UK, where Luang Por Sumedho is based, famous for this expression of
It's a
"it's
great
like
picture.
this."
Yeah,
It's like
it is a
this.
great picture.
Yeah, he's turning 91 very soon, so he's very healthy. He's a Dhamma hero for me, but I think he's a Dhamma hero for a lot of people as well.
Yeah.
So, Jiryu, I want to thank you, and may you continue nicely and warmly on your path, and let the Dhamma continue to inspire your days.
I am grateful for the opportunity, humble, given that I have seen many of your interviews with some fantastic monks and practitioners of the Dharma all over the world. So you are very welcome to this
Thank
part
you.
of my time.
Thank you so much, and I hope we'll have another conversation at some point. Maybe some detailing while after you stayed in the UK for some time. We'll see a bit about that. So thank you so much.
この法要は周期約300年前からあるお寺の300歳を祝う法要です。その中で300年を節目にこのお寺のお祝いをする計三大般若というご祈祷をいたします。それに合わせてですね、七世住職の退任式、そして先々代の六世住職の専住期と申しましてご法事、そして八世私の新三結成といいまして住職の就任式を行いました。特にこの結成行事というのは曹洞宗では大変大事な行事で、修行を大事にする曹洞宗がその修行を始めるにあたっての諸儀式を古式にのっとって行うという、そういうものになっております。そして今それが成就して無事炎上している、ポンとしています。そのためにたくさんの方が手伝ってくださいました。そのお一人お一人の名前顔というのは挙げていったらもう数えきれないですけれど、あなた方はもう感謝の気持ちでいっぱいです。
I was delighted to get the opportunity to come and practice as a Shuso here in Japan, as there aren't many opportunities in England or in Europe for that matter for being a Shuso and doing a Hosen Shik. However, I was wholly unprepared for the warmth of Shuei's family, the support from the Dankas of families, the incredible welcome I have felt at this temple, and what a great honour it has been to be a part of these ceremonies over this weekend. I'm still a bit taken aback by the entire experience. It has been beyond anything I could have imagined. A fantastic opportunity, not just to do my Hosen Shik, but to participate in the life of a Japanese temple in a real community of Buddhist support. The couple of weeks I've spent with Shoei and his family have been just brilliant, a remarkable experience.